To my right, Andy Pico, Colorado Springs City Council.
Norm Steen, Teller County Commissioner.
Sally Clark, El Paso County Commissioner.
Todd Knight, Colorado Springs City Council.
Sharon Thompson, Fountain City Council.
Dave Turley, Mayor of Woodland Park, just re-elected yesterday.
Congratulations.
Unopposed.
Rod Chisholm, Deputy Garrison Commander, and I wasn't elected at all.
Rich Birchfield, Peterson Air Force Base, representing Colonel John Shaw, who's out at Offutt Air Force Base today. So, since his best.
Rich Fogg, Vice Wing Commander, 10th Air Base Wing, United States Air Force Academy.
Mark Dwalby, Park County Commissioner, facing another election.
Travis Easton, Mayor of Monument. Wisdom to not seek a second term.
Mark, young man.
Keith McCafferty, Mayor of Raymond for the next 4 years.
Wayne Williams, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. Didn't you already seek a second? It was like a third or fourth?
No. It seems like it.
We're counting those times on council. The just mention and a plug and thank you for, we have worked on adding 24/7 drop-off boxes, and we're underway in doing that in Manitou Springs, in Fountain, in Calhan, and in Monument. So thank you, all of our friendly governments who've worked with us to try to ensure the ability of voters to easily return ballots. So thank you very much.
Joe Glenn, El Paso County Commissioner.
Hi, Rob McDonald, PPACG.
Mark Snyder, Mayor of Manitou Springs.
Back to the PPACG table.
Jason Wilkinson, Policy and Communications.
Rich Muzzy, PPACG Environmental Program.
Beverly Mayeski, Financial Manager.
Craig Casper, Transportation Director.
Bob Baker, representing the CAC. Wade Burkholder, Manitou Springs.
Greg Chavez, El Paso County.
Walter Ernst, Transportation Professional, Colorado Springs.
Kyle Logan, the PPACG's auditor with Logan and Associates.
Kathleen Kreger, City Traffic Engineer.
Craig Lewis, City of Colorado Springs, and non-metropolitan transit. Jeff Bond, 21st Phase Wing, Peterson.
Mark Goldcheck, representing the Military Affairs Council.
Brian Matuli, PPACG.
Phil Gamble, the Regional Advisory Committee for the Direct.
James McMurray, Marcel Day.
Michael Snow, CDOT Planning Liaison to Pikes Peak.
Wendy Pettit, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Guy from Silvera, PPACG.
Which brings us back to Mr. Waller.
Doug Lawler, CDOT Region 2. My
Very
apologies.
good. Thank you. Any changes to the agenda? Have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 3, under public comment, we have an A prime. That's something I've learned since I've been chair, by the way. Now, let me turn the floor over to Mayor Mark Snyder.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's my pleasure to introduce, he's already said his name, but we have our new planning director, Mr. Wade Burkholder from Manitou Springs
Wade, if
here.
you could come on up here.
And if anybody wants to, if anybody's looking at establishing a business or any type of enterprise in Manitou Springs, Wade is going to be your first call, and he comes to us from Botetourt County in rural Virginia, where I don't believe he has any experience with recreational marijuana. So it's our pleasure to welcome Wade and then to give him the immediate thankless task of regulating potential recreational marijuana in Manitou Springs. So his learning curve has been very steep, but we're really glad to have you, Wade. Thanks a lot.
It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Item 3A, a resolution of appreciation for Town Monument Mayor Travis Easton. And Travis, I see that your name tag still says Mayor. Does that mean the swearing in has not taken place yet?
It actually took place Monday, but I will be here for all intents and purposes for this meeting, and then Rafael Dominguez will be joining you next month.
Very good. Well, fellow commissioners, I'd like to read the following item resolution into the record. Resolution by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors acknowledging appreciation to Town of Monument Mayor Travis Easton, April 9th, 2014. Whereas the Town of Monument is a member government of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, and whereas the Town of Monument has representatives serving on the various committees of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, and whereas Travis Easton, as mayor, has served and represented the Town of Monument and the Board of Directors, on the Board of Directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments since 2009. And whereas Mayor Travis Easton has served the residents of the Town of Monument and the Pikes Peak region with distinction, and whereas the April 9th, 2014 Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors meeting will be his final meeting as a member. Now be it therefore resolved that the Board of Directors wishes to acknowledge its deepest gratitude to Town of Monument Mayor Travis Easton for his commitment to regional planning and collaboration. It's early. And for his dedication to the advancement of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. Resolved, approved, and adopted by the Board of Directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments this 9th day of April, 2014, at Colorado Springs, Colorado. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Before we call the roll, Travis, do you have anything you would like to?
I guess I'd just like to thank all of you. Thanks for the friendship, the camaraderie. It's always good to get everybody together for the best of the region, and appreciate this group. Rob, you and your staff, fantastic. Appreciate all that you guys do, and thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me be a part of it, and that's about it.
Mayor
Never again.
Yeah, I'd like
I'm
to.
planning on it. No.
I'd like to say thanks to Travis for not only the work he's given here, but being a mayor, he's also served on the mayor's caucus, and so we've had numerous meetings and things together, and it's been a real pleasure and working with you, Travis, and it's nice to work with somebody that's still got their hair and and doesn't have that white beard, and does bring a little bit of a different perspective to things that I think is very good, and I've really enjoyed working with you, Travis. I wish you the best.
Thanks.
Yes, Mayor Snyder.
Echo Mayor Turley's sentiments as one of the founding members of the Pikes Peak Mayor's Caucus. Monument's always, I think, been a voice of reason in the region. You guys really handle your affairs up there. Sometimes it gets a little dicey with some of your politics, but you've always stayed above the fray, and I admire you leaving voluntarily, not being term limited. So many of us, I think, drink the Kool-Aid and have to be dragged kicking and screaming out of here. And so I wish you the very best and enjoy your young family.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Wayne Williams.
Well, I've had the actual opportunity to work with Travis for a lot longer because he was on Monument Town Council and served on the Baptist Road RTA. And so he has had a long-term commitment. And I really appreciate all of you, particularly those who are doing it without any compensation at all, who spend your time and come to meetings beyond what is required because you actually care about what happens. And that commitment that Travis and each of you have shown is an important part of what makes this community successful. And, I would say that your colleague in Palmer Lake came back. So, the life is long, so never say never. There's also someone that came back on the Berta board after, a very short absence. But
With a cake.
Yeah.
But I want to say, Travis, thank you for your service to the community, all that you've done, both regionally, but particularly in the Monument area. And there have been a lot of changes that have taken place during the time that you've been in leadership there. And it is a much more vibrant community, and has changed significantly under your leadership. So congratulations. and best wishes to you and Maggie as you continue on in the future.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dwalby.
Travis, so many young people are just attack the government, and all they have to say is, identify problems and point out things that aren't perfect, and then some stand up and do something, and stand for their country and for their town and for their state. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
For what you've done.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Glenn.
Yeah, I definitely want to chime in. Travis has been a great support system up in Monument. I'm very pleased with how well his leadership in that area. He's always very thoughtful with regard to his comments and concerns in the region, and he's going to be missed. But I understand he's doing this for the right reasons. He wants to spend time with his family in the formative years, so I really applaud that. But he's done a lot. When you think about where Monument's going, has really set up a nice plan for the future of Monument. And I'm going to miss him, but I'm going to keep his phone number just in case.
Thanks.
Yes, Tyler Stevens.
Additionally, I'd like to thank you, Travis, for your leadership, both regionally and Monument. As mentioned earlier, your initial involvement with the Mayor's Caucus was just tremendous. Hashing through the FERPA and PRTA issues has been tremendous. Your advocacy with a level-headed manner towards the betterment of the northern portion of the community is just tremendous.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Commissioner Clark.
Just wanted to thank Travis for your partnership. Obviously, with 8 municipalities within El Paso County, Monument is one of the important ones that's seen lots of growth, and you've been a good partner in many ways with regard to trails and open space and roads and things that we're working on, as well as here at the PPACG table. So you'll be missed. Best of luck. There is apparently life after elected office, and we look forward to seeing who takes your place.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you know who that is yet?
Rafael Dominguez.
Oh, Rafael. Well, we know Rafael, too,
Yes, you do.
so that's great. Thank you.
With that, we will call the roll. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And I believe we have a parting gift.
Yeah.
Come on down.
Hey, our pleasure.
We'll make them go all the way around.
Do you have a, there's the camera.
The camera is here. As normal, the parting gift, not the home game, framed print of the artwork that represents PPACG. I think the audience has seen it, or you've seen these. Now it'll hang wherever you hang.
There's something behind you. Let's move that. Yeah. It just doesn't look very good.
And you get that, too.
All right. Once more. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice next to that dogs playing poker velvet.
Yeah,
Great.
You know, I'm wondering if we have any fancier one. Just sign the resolution? We'll talk to. Oh, I'll move it here. Okay, 3B, items not on the agenda. This would be for members of the public who would like to bring something before this body that is not on today's agenda. Anyone in the audience? You're all here for a reason, huh? Okay. Item 4 is our consent items. Unless anyone has a reason to pull A, B, or C off of the agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve. So moved. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, reports. Begin with the Executive Director's report. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my report, most of those are on the agenda as well, but let me just touch on a couple of things. I think first one, under transportation, you'll hear a little bit of this later, with TIP Amendment 14, which is on the agenda. Really a lot of effort gone in by local government staff, CDOT, our staff, to look at how to reconcile money that may not have been completely spent over the years. But we're fortunate. CDOT tracks things, I think, forever and never closes projects. Doug may comment on that, but we tend to look back now and again and find money that could be repurposed. And so we think we've got some good ideas of how to repurpose that money and get some projects done that this board has really said, let's try to get this done. And I think that group now is headed toward funding the Fillmore I-25 intersection. So we think that's probably fully funded, but one step at a time. It's not a TIP amendment today, but it will be for next month. It'll go through the TAC and the CAC one more cycle, and they'll decide how to best allocate that money and then recommend on up to you. So TIP Amendment 14, as I said, is on the agenda. Had a fairly large meeting last Friday with all the MPOs in the state, with Executive Director Don Hunt from CDOT, and a lot of CDOT staff talking about cash management and how it interacts with the TIP that we do and our TIP that goes into the state version, which is the STIP. So a 3-hour meeting to understand those processes. We have a follow-up meeting after the STAC meeting this Friday. Continue to understand how it all works together, because cash management and the ramp projects under CDOT, how the fund balance that CDOT has is being used to fund different projects, and how that integrates with the TIP that we do. We also had Federal Highways there to help interpret the federal law that we all follow in developing our TIP. So when you prioritize something in the TIP, it goes on to the STIP, and then it gets funded year after year. So we thought it was a really good meeting. Both sides learned, I think, a little bit about the other, and we'll follow that up and probably report back to the board with how that's going. The last item I will touch on with our insurance program. We'll report to you next month with the Connect for Health, the exchange that Colorado sent up. The first enrollment period is done. We don't, excuse me, we don't have all the numbers to report to you just yet. So we want to make sure we got all those numbers. And it's one of those great it depends numbers. How many people did you talk to? How many people did you help sign up? How many people actually paid? So like on the national scene, how many people signed up for Affordable Care Act? They have a number, but then how many? So we want to get that really squared away before we come back and report to you on that. Lisa Hietala will do that probably next month, and we'll have those numbers probably defined differently to say how many did we talk to and on down the list, so we get a good understanding of how that program was effective here at PPACG. That's my report.
Comment?
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
I just wanted to say, regardless of where you are on the Affordable Care Act, or now I think they're trying to call it the Accountable Care Act, at least from a county perspective, that Colorado on a national level is in a better place than most other states because we have the exchange in place. And I know it became extremely politically charged, but because we have the option of the exchanges, and regardless of where you stand on this, it's moving forward, and our citizens are going to have to be part of this. Otherwise, they won't. I mean, there will be penalties. There are other things combined with this. So Colorado really has, I think, stepped forward and done some things that are more creative than other states that are in worse situations other than where we are not. So just to let you know, reaching out to your citizens is important. And again, putting our partisanship aside and saying, hey, it's about what's best for Coloradans at this point, we are in a better position. So I think we need to also reach out to Rob and say, how can we help in terms of the enrollment, because I don't want my constituents to be in a worse position because they didn't enroll or they didn't seek the the assistance. And online, I think our system is working better than many other states. So I think, Rob, if you can just let us know how we can help to reach out a little bit better to our citizens, it will eventually work the kinks out, I hope. I don't know exactly where this is all going. None of us really do, except that the horse has already left the barn, and it's time to, it's time to at least move forward with what we have to do, not just what we necessarily want to do. So, Rob, I don't know if you have any thoughts or others have any comments to make with that regard.
We completely agree. We're debriefing with the other primary Connect for Health partner in the region, Peak Vista. So we're going to meet with probably not only them, but the others in the region and statewide to say, okay, how did outreach work for everybody? How did you tie it in? Because some county health departments or human services, whoever they are, they tried outreach, and they were the go-to place. For this region, the hub for Connect for Health was actually Boulder County. And so we've got to talk with them to see how did that work remotely, because they were kind of the umbrella organization for this area and a lot of other counties. So as we do that, I think we'll start next month to report back. Here's what we found. Here's what worked. Going out to county fairs, for instance, was a good idea. Going through the libraries, going to campuses, going to different places. Folks tried all sorts of different things to try to get the numbers, the touches at least, started. How it went from there, as I said, we're trying to decipher some of that. And so working with the counties and any other, some of the nonprofits too. So we'll report that back starting next month as we start getting the information from the Connect for Health. I'll call them the mothership, for lack of a better term. But they've been asking us and everyone to send in their information, and we're doing the same. But we'll also get the feedback from them to see what actually worked best.
Well, and so I'm assuming, if I might, Mr. Chair, I'm assuming that you're in connection with our county human services directors for all of our counties as well, with trying to find out how things are going. Because I know we've had an increase in applications, but then a lot is going on online. So there's still, I mean, it's not going to be a perfect system for a long, long time. And let's not go back to time in the Colorado Benefits Management System, because that was a different issue with human services. But I do think that it's if you can make sure you connect with our human services directors in our counties, they're the ones that are administering a lot of this.
And just to follow up, that's a great point, because there are other programs. I mean, we have other programs we sign up, like Medicare Part D. So all those different human services type programs, we do some, the county does a ton, other nonprofits do. So we continue to try to make sure there's a one door into the systems collectively. So we'll outreach and make sure we get probably everyone in a room. Remember, the next sign-up period for Connect for Health starts October 1st. So we don't have a really long time to debrief, get reset, and get back out there.
Very good. 5B, Transportation Advisory Committee. Tom Kasawara.
Morning. We had a pretty busy meeting scheduled last month. At our regular meeting, we recommended approval with one opposed to the revised TIP Amendment number 14, which Rob alluded to earlier. And we wound up having a workshop on the whole thing because there was a lot of items that we wanted to talk about. And we did have that workshop last week regarding funding reconciliation for all of the projects. We're awaiting a memo from PPACG staff for this repurposing of all of the funds, because we had quite a spirited discussion, talked about Cimarron and Fillmore and Powers and how we can try to fund all of those projects in the coming years, sooner rather than later. We also recommended approval of TIP Amendment 15, which is on your agenda today as well. We had a presentation from Brian Vituli regarding the 2040 RTP objectives and targets and evaluation criteria. We added the information on that from the Safety Committee meeting that was on an earlier agenda. We had a discussion regarding State Highway 94 at the request of Schriever. They would like to see 94 widened from 2 to 4 lanes with a median from the Colorado Springs limits to Enoch Road. That's it's between 4 and 6 miles, so there's some funding issues with that, but they've had some accidents out there. They'd like to improve the lighting and restart the transit service link between Peterson and Schriever. So that's been discussed a little bit, and some of the TAC members that were there were very anxious to see what they can do to get some funding for that, because it's looks like it's a pretty important issue for Schriever. We also talked about the census urbanized area boundary adjustments and chapters 1 and 2 of the RTP that we need to start reviewing. And then I couldn't let Travis leave without embarrassing him one more time and echo everybody's sentiments about him. I've been working for 38 years, and I've never worked for a better mayor. So be embarrassed, turn red, it's okay. But something that you need to know is he's also one of my consultants. So now I'm his client. So it's all one-sided now. So, good luck with that. So that's all I've got. Any questions?
Thanks,
Thank
Tom. Community Advisory Committee, out from behind the post, Bob Baker. And Bob, the commissioners did finally get you reappointed. We somehow felt it would not be appropriate to
fire the chairman.
Fire
It's
the
been
chairman,
done before,
yeah.
I'm sure. Well, Travis, having retired 5 years ago, you should enjoy the moments like today. It's good to receive those comments while you are still above ground, and you've got a long ways to go. Our nominating committee, composed of Larry Bagley, Kathleen Johnson, and Ellen Hase, had a plate full this month. We have 3 term-limited members departing and 1 member leaving the area, 4 in total. They interviewed some 6 applicants, all good applicants, and forwarded 3 to you for approval. Thank you in advance for those approvals. After the fact, a 4th person is now recommended for approval to the CAC and then to you in May, along with any other comments that we might have. Given the above referenced additions and the turnover in those representing communities and community organizations on the CAC, we are scheduling a workshop prior to our regular meeting on April 30th, the emphasis being the relative weighting and recommendations of the objectives, targets, and evaluation criteria in the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. Additionally, at the meeting, we reviewed and approved for recommendation to the board TIP Amendments 14 and 15, and we reviewed and approved for recommendation to the board the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, draft objectives, targets, and project evaluation criteria. We additionally received a briefing on the Title VI Limited English Proficiency Plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? You covered it. Regional Advisory Council, Bill Gamble.
Good morning.
Greetings.
We had a very successful meeting on March 28th, and all of our meetings are successful, by the way. But we had some good presentations, and in general, I think our presentations are getting better as we do the presentations individually each month instead of one day out of the year. We had some good presentations. One from the Mountain Metro Transit. Did you know that there's a class on how to ride the bus? We usually just hop on the bus and go where, but Mountain Metro Transit has a class to teach you how to work the schedules, purchase your tickets, all that kind of stuff. And that's very helpful for people who are, a little gray hair, a little more than gray hair. But anyway, it was a great presentation by Mountain Metro Transit. I didn't know we had such a class. And coming up in May, I think it's the first Friday in May, is Ride the Bus to Work Day. So think about that. Ride the bus to work from wherever you are. We had good presentations from Colorado Legal Services, Comfort Keepers, and Prospect Home Care and Hospice. Again, all of these presentations tell us how our providers are doing with our seniors, and they're very positive and effective. A lot of times the solution is not just money. A lot of times the solution is finding people who will volunteer to provide the service. But by and large, we are the providers are doing a great job. Guy will talk to you about the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act and his meeting with Senator Bennett's office regarding that act. The last Wednesday was Senior Day at the Capitol. Members of the RAC attended, and if you didn't know it, seniors are taking over. With the coup d'etat going on, seniors are going to run everything. And lastly, we will, members of the RAC will participate in the El Paso County Fair in July, and if any of you'd like to join us, you're quite welcome. Anything else?
Thank you. Any questions for Bill? Appreciate it. Mobility Coordinating Committee. Gail Nels, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. You have the summary of the minutes in front of you. I think I'd like to point out a few things. One was we had a presentation from El Pomar to all the community coordinating committee members about fundraising. And I think we all are at the point where, whether we're nonprofit or public sector agencies, where to look for other funds. So it was informative, but I think we all recognize that El Pomar cannot be our sugar daddy. Another thing that was brought out was Teller County now has their senior coalition is now doing some transit to provide grocery shopping for people in that county. Another significant topic discussion was the software update for the 4 agencies participating in the VTCLI, the Joint Dispatch and Call Center, and we're moving forward. Meetings have been held to initiate, and we're looking forward to an implementation in, I'd say, late spring, early summer. And we also talked about the commute week that will be coming up in May for transit. Any questions? Thank you.
Well done, thank you. Mobility, no, we just did that one. Air Quality Technical Committee, Tim Roberts.
Good morning. On March 13th, we had a very focused meeting, a strategic planning session of the Air Quality Technical Committee. We focused on the goals for this year and actually next year. Of course, our first goal is to remain in compliance with the EPA standards. We did discuss the 2040 Long-Range Transportation Plan update and the goal that was recommended for approval by this board. That was to reduce absolute regional transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions and air criteria pollutant emissions. We did discuss our desire to increase the awareness of air quality issues and health-related issues, and the subsequent health-related issues with that. The objectives and strategies, we discussed increased education, media outreach, pursuing more grants, and developing and enhancing partnerships within the community. So, very focused meeting.
Questions for Tim? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
Yes.
Could I ask a question of Guy? Can I ask him to come back up on the Older Americans Act if there's anything we can do?
Guy, do we have you later on the agenda? We do not. Oh, okay.
You mentioned speaking with Senator Bennett, but I noticed in your advocacy report, you talked about one of the issues that we're concerned about is that they're using 2000 census data for calculating our population rather than 2010 census data on the number of seniors. What is there we can do to help advocate for more accurate population numbers?
Well, first let me explain why they're using the 2000 census numbers. When sequestration took effect, it rolled back the funding to 2006 levels. In 2006, we were using 2000 census data, and so they are using that census data rather than the 2010. The hold harmless provisions were originally designed to protect states whose senior population may not be growing as quickly as other states from actually losing funds. The idea was that the funds would grow and no one would lose, but eventually everyone would share in the gains. when sequestration happened, the effect of using the 2000 census data along with the hold harmless provisions is that Colorado seniors are receiving 18 to 23% less than they would under a straight funding formula. C4A, the Colorado Association of Area Agencies on Aging, has written all of our representatives and asked them to address this. And my conversation with Senator Bennett's office shows that they are actively engaged in this, and they have formed alliances with North Carolina and other states that are in similar situations similar to ours. I'm sure they'd be happy to hear from you, and it certainly never hurts to reinforce what we've already told them. But we are fortunate to have Senator Bennett's office actively engaged, and I'm sure that Senator Udall's is as well.
Can you do me a favor, and if you have a copy of the letter, whatever it was that was sent, can you get the board a copy of that letter?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Arkansas Fountain Coalition for Urban River Evaluation. Rich Muzzy.
AFCURE met on April 1st, no joke. The first item we talked about was the nutrients modeling pilot project in Boulder Creek, which is being done in Boulder County, and how some of the information and knowledge gained and the results will be helpful to our area in potentially also doing nutrients modeling here. And we also talked about dues and funding for 2014. And invoices will be sent out by the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority. AFCURE is a subgroup of Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority in a week or two for the funding for 2014 and part of 2015. Brown and Caldwell passed out a copy of the Water Quality Monitoring Baseline Plan, which identifies all the current monitoring locations and the parameters that are being monitored and the locations and the frequency. And we talked a little bit about kind of future efforts and future monitoring that will be done. As far as next steps, I'll be talking more about that during the white paper discussion.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Rich.
Sure.
Moving on to our action items. Item A, PPACG 2013 Fiscal Year Annual Audit Presentation by Logan and Associates.
Good morning. My name's Kyle Logan with Logan and Associates, and I'm here to present the results of our audit of PPACG's 2013 financial statements. You should have two documents in front of you. One is the financial statements, and then the other one is the letter to management.
And those were on the table we got here.
Does everybody have? Okay. So anyway, what I'll start off with is we perform the actual what we call field work of the audit in two phases. One phase usually happens in December, where we come out, test internal controls. We pick samples of cash disbursements, payroll transactions. We also do our testing of the federal programs that are required, and then in phase two is when we come out, usually around the middle of February, and that's when we actually look at the numbers. So the financial statements and the footnotes in the document here is what we do in phase two, and so. Colorado statute requires that all local governments have an annual audit by an independent CPA. And so the governing council hires us to come in and perform that audit. The numbers, the footnote disclosures, the MD&A, everything in this document, those are the responsibility of management. The only thing in this document is the opinion letters, which are on pages A through C, following the table of contents. And if you look at that page, basically what this starts out tells you our responsibilities as your auditors, yours and management's responsibilities in relation to all the information that follows. On page B, at the top of the page, that section that says opinions, to me, that's the most important part of this document. That is our opinion on the financial statements. And in accounting terms, the opinion is what's called an unmodified opinion. So what does that mean in layman's terms? That means it's a clean opinion. That means that all the numbers in here, all the disclosures in this document are in accordance with accounting principles for a local government agency. And so that's the best that you can receive. So following this the opinion is the management's discussion and analysis. That basically tells you, kind of gives you a narrative of what's happened over the past year with PPACG's finances. Following that are the basic financial statements, which includes the, for simplicity purposes, the balance sheet and the income statements, both on a full accrual basis and a modified accrual basis, which the modified accrual basis is what you are used to seeing throughout the year. Following that are the footnotes that explains certain required disclosures, and also goes into a little more detail on some of the numbers presented in the financials. And then followed by that are the budgetary comparison schedule. So it shows you how, based on the budget you guys adopted at the beginning of the year, it shows you how you came in comparison as far as expenditures and revenues. Okay. Now, because PPACG receives over $500,000 receives and spends over $500,000 in federal dollars, you're required to have another audit, which is called a single audit. Basically, it's a compliance audit. And so, as part of that, you for 2013, you spent just a little under $3.1 million in federal programs. And so we are required by government auditing standards and the OMB to choose programs and audit those programs. And so in doing so, this year we again picked the Title III programs on for supportive services to senior centers, as well as nutrition services. And again, a new program we picked this year was National Family Caregiver Support. And so as a result of our auditing procedures, we did have one finding, which is the same as last year. It's related to the nutrition services program. Federal requirements require that all monies that are used to purchase food, or all food that's purchased, is required to be produced domestically. And I think there was just a breakdown in the procedures there as far as making sure that documentation was received from all the recipients of the money that's passed through. And so as a result, there's a corrective action responded to. And as part of our follow-up next year during our audit, we will follow up to make sure that that's been put in place. As a result of our finding, does it change our opinion on anything? No, it does not. Okay, so there's, from my standpoint as an auditor, it's not a concern for alarm that would change anything in this document. It's just something that we have to mention. Okay, so that's the financial statements. I will say, when you look at it from, you always know how you ended up over the year. You ended up with approximately $130,000 net income, or an increase in your net assets. And again, that's related to some savings in your expenditures throughout the year. So that's always a good thing that we look at for ongoing operations of the PPACG. Okay. Before I go to the management letter, any questions on the financial statements?
Commissioner Clark.
And I guess on page 23, the schedule of findings and question costs, this was the only area that you found there was a non-compliance?
Correct, of the programs that we tested. So,
and it says here, and I'm assuming you did our report last year, that in the cause, it says that the corrective action plan disclosed in the prior year's schedule of findings and question costs was, they were supposed to do a corrective action plan last year, but didn't.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So, and I guess I'll, at some point, ask Rob to explain what we've done to rectify that, just so we make sure we don't lose some of our federal funding because we're not meeting the federal requirements. So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Moving on.
Okay. Moving on to the management letter. And again, this is our professional standards require us to communicate with you, the governing board of the PPACG. It's similar to what the opinion letter is, but it tells you what our responsibilities are under accounting standards and auditing standards. And then also, it tells you on page 2 there, we kind of reiterate the finding that we had in the financial statements. So, again, it's things that we put in this letter that we recommend changing to make things better, but it's not something that's so significant enough that would cause us to change our opinion on the financial statements. And so, also, you know, we disclose in here if there were any changes to your accounting policies, if we had any disagreements during our audit. Had we had disagreements during our audit, you probably would have heard from us before today. So that's a good thing. And if we made any significant adjustments, we did make one adjustment, which was related to timing of grant funds that are received from CDOT, because they are kind of slow in getting reimbursements of grants. And so from a timing and accounting standpoint, we have to look at that and say, okay, how soon did you get them? Did you get them soon enough after year end to pay for current period expenditures? And so all that does was we just move some money out of the revenues into the liabilities. It doesn't go away. It just gets recognized in this upcoming year, 2014. And so finally, at the end, we have the easy part coming in, looking at the numbers. I'd like to thank Rob, Beverly, Guy, and Dawn, and the staff here. They're the ones that have the hard part as far as digging for things, answering questions, and coming up with a lot of stuff. So we really appreciate the work that they do as far as helping us get through our audit. It makes it go very smooth. That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Logan? Well done. Thank you.
Okay.
And now back to questions for. Do we need a motion to accept? Oh, we do need a motion to accept. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Clark.
As part of the packet that we have on page 24, there is what it says, NSIP proposed corrective action plan. There's no date on it, so I'm assuming that's this year's proposed action plan, and there's no signature. So what do you need from us, Rob, to get this put into the plan to make sure that this is actually what will happen?
Sure.
Because it says proposed, it doesn't say that
Right.
this is a corrective action plan, and there's no date on it, and there's no signature, so.
Sure, answer both parts. The answer is chocolate. Who doesn't know things? In our case, it's chocolate software. We're converting our AAA, the dollars and contracts we send out. We have RFPs on the street to provide senior services, including the NSIP-related reimbursement program. As part of that software, we hard-coded into that software a checkbox that we have documentation that the food produced by those vendors and we're reimbursing them for will have the documentation. So they can't get reimbursement unless we have that checkbox in the software. So the corrective action plan, because chocolate software is not in place yet, it's up out there, but we haven't used it. So we've taken it out of our human hands. We've put it, obviously, human oversight of the software, but it's almost impossible now for us to not have that certification. And so if I missed anything, Guy can give the gory details. But the software we've developed, hard-coded it, so NSIP will be documented to the nth level of detail
So you
before
have
they
hard-
even get a reimbursement.
Hard-coated chocolate?
Yes.
That doesn't get on your hands?
Yes. No calories either.
That sounds familiar, like M&M's, sort of.
So if I might, Mr. Chairman, based on the letter that's in here, I think, first of all, we need to take proposed out, because if it's going to be your corrective action plan, it will be, but in that end statement, the last line, should this not be possible, PPACG AAA will check for an attached certification with any and all provider reimbursement, which include expenditures of, what is it, NSIP, is that how you say it? NSIP funds. So that's the alternative if the software doesn't click in immediately, correct?
Correct.
So as someone who wants to make sure that we're doing it appropriately, because I don't want us to lose funds because we didn't meet compliance, I would suggest the word proposed be removed, that this would be the corrective action, and then obviously the fallback plan is that last line that PPACG AAA will check for attached certification. Does that need to say, should this not be possible? I mean, essentially, you either have to do one or the other. Either you're going to use the software or you're not going to use the software. We just need to make sure it's done appropriaply.
Yep. And Guy will have
So,
a detail.
Rob, if you could report back on this next month in your report.
We will.
Okay. Guy?
Let me help just a little bit with this. NSIP stands for Nutritional Service Incentive Program. It used to be called USDA Commodities. The requirement is that that money be spent on domestically produced food. Up for many, many years, as long as I've been around the AAA, the State Unit on Aging has accepted documentation from our food vendors that they spend at least the proportion of money that they get reimbursed through NSIP on domestically produced product. This has been acceptable to the State Unit on Aging, who would be the one responsible for withdrawing funds should it happen for many years. Kyle is going an extra step, and we think that's a good thing. First of all, I want to apologize to the board that we didn't get this done. That's not acceptable. But the chocolate software, the system that Rob is talking about will be resident in the reimbursement system, which will go into effect July 1st. I didn't want to say that it would be done absolutely because it hasn't been done yet. But we expect that to be available for the subcontractors to report in as of August 10th, which is the beginning of their first report for next fiscal year. And should that not happen, we'll be happy to come back to the board and report that we're going to take the option 2.
I just want something memorialized that we're doing one or the other so that PPACG is protected and so are those who are, getting our services through federal dollars that need to comply. So however that needs to be worded, if you can please just revise it and make sure that it includes the dates and necessary information.
And I think we can, as Guy said, because this summer we'll have real case to say, here's an output that we documented NSIP by a vendor that got reimbursed. If not through chocolate software, as Guy said, there will be a letter, there will be documentation from the vendor that says, yes, we complied with all these standards.
Commissioner Steen.
I'm just wondering how far or how difficult it is to meet this bar of meeting domestically produced foods only. Is this going to eliminate some vendors from providing service, or how difficult is this?
Yeah, and Guy can correct me, but I don't think we've noticed that we're losing subcontractors for our AAA programs because of this requirement, no matter what it was called for over the years or what it now called NSIP. I don't think we've had a case where people have dropped out because of this requirement.
So this is specifically for what we call C2 funds, which is home-delivered meals. The home-delivered meals that are delivered through El Paso, Fountain Valley, Teller County Senior Coalition, and the Park County Senior Coalition all can't come from the same vendor, which is Sun Meadows. So they all, they basically send to the vendor and say, we need documentation of this. They get a letter back from the vendor. It's there when the AAA goes out and assesses them, or when assesses them, or when the State Unit on Aging assesses them. We already have documentation for 2013, so there's time to work on this to make sure that it's institutionalized in a way that we won't fail in the future.
Thank you. Moving on to 6B, Transportation Improvement Program, Amendment Number 14. Craig Casper.
Good morning. This is last month's agenda item, Amendment 14, with a couple of differences. The primary difference is this is only amending into the TIP Cimarron Interchange. The Fillmore Interchange and Powers Widening projects will be discussed in a little bit, although good news, based on the meeting we had a week ago right now, we believe we funded the Fillmore Interchange with some reconciled Metro dollars, but I'll get to that in a bit. And first off, need to give a big thank you to Les Gruen. Last month, he said that he would get this project budgeted to commission. It has, in fact, been budgeted, so we're playing catch-up right now, actually. This project is moving forward.
Let me interrupt. Welcome, Commissioner Gruen. Appreciate you coming and all your hard work.
Yep. Based on a meeting we had yesterday, this project will actually be fully operational July 1st, 2017. And I just want to point out to Commissioner DeWalby, I did make sure to put in a plug for a gateway sign, Park County, this way.
Tell her too.
We'll
share.
I have a copy of the tip table. What we have, as you can see in the memo, we're amending in about just a little over $40 million of strategic corridor funding, which brings the funding total of this project up to the required $95 million amount. This project has been discussed extensively. Are there any questions? I mean, we're there. 43 years after making it our number one priority.
Move approval.
Has it been that long?
Do we have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And as I mentioned, a week ago, the TAC had a workshop. We have holes in funding in future years. We had additional funds from reconciled projects. We went through a process to realign those, and we have, we think, located about $1.3 million in Metro funds that can be applied to the Fillmore Interchange that can be used to keep that project moving forward. In addition, there's about between $3 and $4 million that in future years that is available, and we can host a call for projects for those funds. We have to, with our federal funds, have to have a competitive process. The Powers Boulevard, that project has never been through a competitive process, so we can't just apply those funds, but we'll be doing a call for projects. It's conceivable that that project is applied for and those funds could go to that. It's just we have to go through some motions before we get there. So there could be, like I said, between $3 and $4 million in Metro available for that project too, unless CDOT miraculously finds RPP or something for Powers. But we're trying.
Sitting over there.
Yeah, while Doug is looking.
Yeah, miraculously.
I'm not aware of any miracles that are going to take place in the near future.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
6C, TIP Amendment Number 15, Brian Vituli.
Thank you. Good morning. Brian Vituli with PPACG's Transportation Program. We're asking for your approval of Amendment 15 to the 2013 to 2018 Transportation Improvement Program. This is a request from the City of Colorado Springs to change the purpose of a project that they received funding for prior or initially. They received $112,000 of state faster transit funds for a 2040 long-range transit plan study. They were able to get additional or other funds for that study, so they would like to use this money to repurpose for a downtown transfer station relocation study. They checked with CDOT's Division of Transit and Rail, and the Division of Transit and Rail talked with CDOT Region 2 to make sure that there were no issues with repurposing those funds. and both CDOT divisions are okay with that. Details can be seen in Attachment 1, the request letter from the city. Attachment 2 is the recommended tip table showing basically just the name change for the study. There are no changes in funds, as I said, and no federal funds are used for this. I believe it's the match is coming from PPRTA funds. And both the TAC and the CAC recommended approval last month, and PPACG staff recommends approval. Are there any questions?
Questions for Brian? We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Brian. 60, 2040 Regional Transportation Plan Objectives / Target Evaluation Criteria. Brian, that's yours as well.
Thank you. We're asking for your approval of our objectives and targets and our evaluation criteria. That will help us continue developing our 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. You remember a couple of months ago you approved the goals and performance measures. That was one piece of our Chapter 5 planning framework. These additional items here are needed to continue determining how we'll measure progress toward each goal by identifying targets and objectives and manageable ways to achieve them. We will use the evaluation criteria in the coming months to score all of our member entity projects and evaluate and score the projects to see which ones are incorporated into our plan. Over the last couple months in February and March, staff started with where we left off from our last 2035 plan update, and we started with the objectives and evaluation criteria from that document and updated it with current time bands. So the objectives will state 2020, 2030, 2040, and we also updated it with information to make it consistent with state and federal objectives. As Mr. Kasawara pointed out earlier, Attachment 1 is what we're asking for you to approve today. In March, we had a safety summit to determine how to update the objectives for Goal 5, which is improving safety for all travelers. So in your handout, Attachment 1, you'll see bolded items under the objectives column for the safety goals. So that reflects the input that we heard from all of our partners that were there at our safety summit. We continue to move along on a very, very tight time schedule. Following your anticipated approval of these items today, we will meet with TAC next week and CAC at the end of the month to do weighting of the evaluation criteria. And that will enable us to continue moving forward to get in a better position to issue a call for projects to our member governments and then start evaluating and scoring all these projects. You'll see today you're going to be doing the evaluation criteria. You'll hear a little bit later from Yolanda on our limited English proficiency plan. Work continues on our regional non-motorized transportation system plan. We are having a kickoff meeting tomorrow. PPACG is partnering with the City of Colorado Springs to update the transit and specialized transportation plan. So that's going to be kicking off very soon, and we are continuing to move along on this schedule very quickly. Are there any questions on today's action?
Questions? Anyone in the audience? Councilmember Knight.
Yeah, on goal 12, I see there, we want to reduce the pollution levels 10, 20, and then 30% by 2040. What are the financial implications of doing that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
On goal 12, you're trying to reduce pollutions by 30% in 20 years, 25 5 years? And what are the financial implications to the organizations to get for our cities?
Well, since we vetted this through them over the last couple months, and this actually goes back to a lot of discussion from late summer on the goals and performance measures for stormwater. It was a very, very active discussion item, but everybody has had a chance to comment on the goal and the performance measures and equally on the objectives for that goal. So they appeared to feel comfortable with that.
Follow-up? Do we have a motion?
I'll move for approval.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 6E, PPACG, City of Colorado Springs, 5310 and 5317 funding project selection.
All right, thank you. We're asking for your approval of the 5310, 5317 project selection process. Last month I spoke to you about this item as an information item. The new transportation legislation, MAP 21, required the board to determine how to allocate the funds. And over a year ago, the board elected to keep the City of Colorado Springs as the designated recipient for these funds, but to have PPACG administer the process. Now, the 5310 funds, they support transit services that enhance the mobility of seniors and persons with disabilities. So, in conducting the process, PPACG formed an evaluation committee composed of 5 representatives from various regional bodies. We had 2 members from PPACG's Mobility Coordinating Committee. We had a member from the city's Citizens Transportation Advisory Board, who also serves on the PPRTA Citizens Advisory Committee. We had a representative from CDOT, Division of Transportation Development, who is also one of our Transportation Advisory Committee members. And we had a member from PPACG's Community Advisory Committee. I, along with other PPACG staff, administered the process, and we had oversight from Mountain Metropolitan Transit staff. Neither of us were voting members or influenced the committee in any way. You can see the recommended awards provided by the evaluation committee in attachment 1. The funding level goes all the way down through the Common Works project. So starting at the top, PPACG's 2 projects, AmblCab's 2 projects, Discover Goodwill's replacement vehicle, Mountain Metropolitan Transit's ADA barrier project, another Discover Goodwill project, and the Common Works project were funded. All projects were funded fully, with the exception of AmblCab's 2 projects. Their first one for $86,000 that they were requesting 3 vehicles. The committee determined that one of the vehicles was young enough to keep in their fleet, so they only awarded funding for two vehicles. And then likewise, they reduced their second project by a third to account for that loss of the vehicle. The 3 projects at the bottom of the table were underfunded. We just ran out of funds to fund those. They were good projects, but we were not able to fund them. Attachment 2 is comments that we received going through the process and relating to what our program management plan says that we needed to do with the evaluation committee and working through the process. I presented this attachment 1, the table, to various regional committees, including PPACG's MCC, PPACG's Regional Advisory Council, our PPACG's CAC, City of Colorado Springs CTAB, PPRTA's CAC, and PPACG's Transportation Advisory Committee. So we've been through all of those bodies to get comments, and now it's up to you to make approval. And following approval, the Transit Services Division Manager from Mountain Metropolitan Transit would then accompany your approval with his concurrence that the process was conducted fairly and equitably. Are there any questions?
Questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Yeah. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.
This brings us to information items, and I understand we need a short break for technical purposes. So-
Yeah, I guess the bulb on the projector isn't working. I'm creating a 500-slide presentation, kind of burn it out. So we're going to go ahead and try to start it up. And if not, I've made copies of the PowerPoint, so we'll see what happens. So
Okay.
if we could just take a quick 5-minute presentation, and we'll see if we can get it up and running for at least 20 minutes.
Okay.
Doug Lawler, Rich Fogg. Yeah. Yes, preview times. How are you doing? Good. Doing well.
Hey, Jacqueline.
Busy, but doing well. Yeah.
The Delta. Right now, historically, and up until last meeting, STAC had endorsed the historical formula as the only formula. And that historical formula allocates all of the money on regional priorities programs on 3 criteria. Lane miles of state highways. Vehicle miles traveled on state highways. Truck vehicle mile traveled on state highways. So if you have no state highways, and proportionally, the Pikes Peak area has the fewest number of state highways per citizen of any county in the state of Colorado. And it's not close. We have the fewest by a factor of 2. And so if you use a formula that allocates transportation dollars solely on who already has the roads, those communities that historically have been disadvantaged by that formula will continue to have that disadvantage exacerbated. And so we had a vigorous discussion at STAC with respect to this formula. And ultimately, one of the criteria that accounts for the other factor that kind of matters in this, which is people, is population. It's not a hard formula to calculate. Census does it, state demographer does it on an annual basis. And so the question that was debated was, should population be a factor in there? Now, when you add, you're from a smaller community, so your people were calling you to say, don't use population, Rama loses out. And it's true. When you use population, Rama, communities like Rama don't get as much money.
True. We're going to lobby for dogs.
So, you could allocate it by the number of dogs, the number of cattle, the number of cantaloupe grown, all of which have some factor. But should population be a factor? And the belief from Dr. Cog and Pikes Peak is yes, it should be one of the factors that you look at. From many of my colleagues, and recognize that I think there's 15 STAC representatives who can vote, and 14 of them, 12 of them are from rural areas. So half the population over half the population of the state has 3 people. And as you look at kind of that rural-urban split, it should therefore be no surprise that the predominantly rural membership of STAC was less than ecstatic about taking away their carrots, taking away their money, because they've always had that money. And so, just like that kid who's now bigger, and remember when the state highway systems developed 60, 70 years ago, El Paso County was a tiny little kid. We were a tiny rural community that had no people. And we have very few state highways because there was no one here to justify state highways at the time. Now, we have 650,000 people. We're the state's most populous county, and we think that needs to be taken into account. So, there was a long discussion at STAC. There was a proposal introduced. There were a series of attempts to reconcile and reach a compromise, and ultimately, STAC compromised more closely to the original formula, but for the first time ever, they moved off the old formula and added population to the mix in their recommendation to the Transportation Commission. The initial and the proposal to replace a more population-friendly compromise that I had submitted was defeated, or was amended to a less population-friendly proposal with 2 no votes on that, Dr. Cog and Pikes Peak. But STAC's recommendation is still to change the existing formula and for the first time ever add population. That recommendation plus the staff recommendation, which is to make population a bigger factor, go to the Transportation Commission. And there have been outcries from some folks in rural communities saying this is taking away our money. And just like that example of, well, if I've always had it, it must be mine, there's a significant consideration that has to be done when populations change. It's interesting to hear when we're talking about older workers or older Americans funding, well, you should still get this money even if you don't have the same number of older people that you used to, is kind of an interesting concept. And if the state transportation budget was growing, you could then fund the other areas from that growth portion of the state transportation budget, which was why when we've talked about 7th pot funding, that's the first pot, the second pot, the third, those were some existing revenue streams, and this new stream would help the growing communities. Well, since the legislature eliminated this new stream of funding, or at least a significant portion of it, it becomes very difficult for the growing communities, such as El Paso County and the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments entire area, to say, give us our fair share, at the same time as others are saying, well, you can't take anything from me. Well, if it's a zero-sum game, you can't possibly accomplish both of those. So that was the long and involved discussion at STAC. The STAC proposal ultimately is better than its existing recommendation. So although Dr. Cog and us in our votes opposed the amendment, since the main motion was better than the existing recommendation, we joined in on that. But the Transportation Commission has the ultimate say. And I think it's clear that even the rural-dominated STAC supports a change in including population for the first time ever in the calculation. And the issue is how much of a change does the Transportation Commission adopt. So if you look at the STAC agenda, you see absolutely nothing of that other than this little formula program discussion where you see the RPP status update, and that's at the 10:55 time frame. The rest of this is a fairly straightforward agenda. I will tell you that as we deal with funding issues, it becomes important, and it's possible that the RPP program could grow over time, or it could not, depends on where the Transportation Commission takes it, but they're now talking things that matter. So let me talk about what the numbers mean. That was kind of the abstract. If it's a 50 million program, each percent is worth 500,000 a year. Shifting to population increases, depending on what the type of shift is, changes the allocation of the Pikes Peak area by, under the stack recommendation, the concept would be, if it was allocated that way at the region level as well, would be somewhere in the neighborhood of another $1 million a year.
How much?
Million. Remember, this is 50 million spread across the state. So if we shift from, and I forgot the exact percentages, but if you change it by 2 points, you're adding $1 million. And I think Region 2 gets about 500,000 under the stack recommendation, but under some others might get $1 million. And so that's kind of the rough summary of what happened. It was a much more involved discussion than that. But the decision, of course, always rests with the Transportation Commission, which is why I'm glad Les is here. And he and I have been in discussions about why stack did what we did and why I and Dr. Cogg's representatives ultimately voted for the compromise position. And my answer is it's better than the existing formula, but it's certainly not where it needs to be, which is why I opposed the amendment that weakened that change. But you've seen, I think, Action 22 and some of the others have raised some issues with respect to how this isn't fair because it's taking away their money. And again, you've got that little kid who had the 1 carrot when he was 2 years old and now says, well, that's not adequate for me now that I'm a teenager, now that I'm the largest member of the family. I need more than my 1 carrot. But that's kind of the discussion that's going on and why it's there. So with that, I'll turn to the
Transportation Commissioner Les Gruen, your thoughts on the whole process?
Is everyone sufficiently confused? I hope so, because this is incredibly complicated. When I first became a commissioner, I don't think I would have had any idea what was going on. This is so complicated. We have right now a $1.2 billion budget. It used to be $1.5 billion budget. And a small portion of that is something called RPP, Regional Priority Projects, that, as Wayne said, and I would tell you that pretty much everything Wayne described to you is absolutely true, and I'm in agreement with, but it's far more nuanced than this. And I'll try to make it as simple as possible, because this board needs to take a different position. It's important that this board needs to guide your SAC representative to take a different position on this matter. As Wayne indicated, over the years, the RPP budget has varied from almost $200 million a year to what it's recently been, $10 million a year. Out of the entire budget, this particular pot of money is the most discretionary money of any pot of money out of the entire budget. So when each of the regions get regional priority project money, that's the money that they're able to use to bring to the table to Rob and Craig and match and use to throw around to blend with other things that's going on. It's been highly limited in the last few years because there hasn't been a lot of money, and that's one of the places where it's been pulled out. And the Commission has decided that it's time to start releasing more of that money back out to the regions. Historically, as Wayne described, it's been allocated on this 45-40-15 formula. Now, from the time that I became a commissioner, Wayne has talked about how we have fewer lane miles here, and it's a terrible formula. And the commissioners, all of the commissioners, started asking, why are we using 45, 40, 15? They started asking the staff, what's the historic basis for using this? And no one really knew. And we started digging into this at the commission level and really forcing staff to try to get to the bottom of what this 45, 40, 15 was all about. And at the end of the day, the formula is probably not as important as how all the money gets divvied out, right? And what was important to the commission was the distribution of where all the people in this state were. We've got population bases in Denver, in the North Front Range, in the Pikes Peak region, and Pueblo. And there's, as we all know, disproportionate allocation of dollars and population. So what we wanted to do as a commission is come up with a formula that more closely brought those things into alignment. And we came up with a formula that did so. And in fact, we came up with a far different formula than Stack was working with. Wayne is right. He proposed a different formula than Stack came up with, but that formula was substantially different than the one that staff in the Transportation Commission are comfortable with and frankly will almost certainly ultimately get approved. What I am requesting this board to do is direct your Stack representative to support the formula, and you haven't even seen this, it's important stuff to see, that benefits the Pikes Peak region to the greatest extent, substantially more than the Stack recommendation, which I believe the number that I think Stack landed on, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, is 5.8% of the total, whereas the Transportation Commission recommendation is 8%. Now, that's not a big difference, but it's a difference. In percentage terms, that's a big difference. So that's the issue that's out there on this particular item. And what happened was there was a letter that came from all of the MPOs to CDOT recommending this lower distribution, which I'm not sure I had seen during the entire time that I had ever been on the commission. And it ultimately was withdrawn, but it was incredibly controversial because this whole thing was so important, and it benefited the population centers of Colorado so dramatically. And yes, it does affect the rural areas to a certain extent, but not to a degree greater than they've been affected in the past. So that's the big issue, and it was a huge issue. Everything that Wayne said was correct, and he and I and Rob talked immediately after this took place. The other thing I would say is, as a result of this, there was a meeting in Denver with Don Hunt, the executive director of CDOT, senior staff, and Rob and all of his counterparts. This thing created just a tremendous amount of consternation, and Rob might want to discuss that overall meeting with the MPO executive directors, but I think he can share that that meeting was about a different way of doing business at CDOT. So that's the background. Again, I think the outcome and the thing that the board could do that would be most valuable was direct your Stack representative to endorse a formula that would give this region the highest share of discretionary CDOT dollars.
And Rob, let's hold comments on that additional meeting and keep this at Stack at this stage of the game here. Wayne?
If I can take that back. When you're working with a group, and you're trying to get them to budge off of where they are, you have to be willing to compromise. Otherwise, they wouldn't move at all. I don't know that the stack is actually going to re-vote on anything on Friday, but in any case, I won't be there because I have a series of assemblies that I have to be at on that day, and I think Norm's not going to be there. And so Lisa will be there, and so she'll be able to speak for this. But what the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments needs to do, and so this is where I would slightly differ from Les on that, is adopt a resolution in favor of the formula Les is advocating. Because I don't know that there's anything more to direct the STAC representative to do. Because I don't think STAC's going to revisit it, and I don't think there are the votes to change that STAC recommendation. But maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. But I do think it's important for this body to adopt a resolution urging the Transportation Commission as this body to adopt the formula that Les is talking about. And so that's how I would morph the discussion.
I'm fine with that, Wade. It accomplishes the same thing.
Okay. Because I think that's a stronger statement of this body says we believe that the right formula should be this. And the exact formula that you're working with is, I'm looking, Doug, or?
I don't know the percentages or that breakdown.
Correct.
I've seen different ones.
Up to 50% population.
Yeah, we've looked at like.
I think it's 50% population.
Correct. Yeah, I can get the formula, but it's.
So it's 50 population.
Want me to?
Yeah.
And there is agreement, more importantly than the actual details, there is agreement among those in the know that this would be beneficial to the Pikes Peak region?
Right. It absolutely would be, and I support this body adopting that stand. This is a different body than STAC. And from this body's interest as a community, we need to say it needs to be more than I think the population wound up being 20% under the STAC recommendation, and 50 is really, you do half with population, half with the road system, and that's a good balance.
Trustee Stevens?
I'm hearing two separate things in terms of a recommendation for this body. One is to adopt a specific formula, and then as more inclined to go with one of the statements that you made, where we adopt the direction to support the new formula that most benefits this region, which seems obvious, but it's too obvious to make that statement without getting a full background on the formulas. My concern is burning too much of our time understanding the different formulas and just quickly adopting one without, and also not allowing our representative to have the flexibility to adapt and change based on any negotiations we have later. So it's more appealing to me to make that broader statement of have a representative give us the most benefit. It seems obvious, but
And if I could respond to that, Mr. Chairman. The problem with that, Tyler, is a resolution that simply says, give us the most money possible, is viewed as exactly what it is, which is, whereas a resolution that says, we believe this is the fair formula that ought to be adopted, I think is a more impactful resolution at the Transportation Commission. So that would be my response as to why I would think, rather than just say give us as much as possible, would be to say this is the formula we think best represents the interest overall in the state.
Let's hear from Commissioner Gruen, and then we'll go to different Commissioner Wallaby.
Well, I think Tyler actually said it all, and I defer to however we come out. The Commission is inclined. We've already had these discussions, and we would have voted last month were it not for everything that has taken place. We typically vote unanimously. One of our commissioners that represents the southwest part of the state, 23 counties and 2 Indian nations. It's a part of the state that truly, if there's any part of the state that can claim that they're getting shortchanged, it's probably that particular area. And this formula that we've proposed adversely affects that particular area more than any other part of the state, any of our other regions. I think she has indicated to us that she will be voting against this formula for that reason, but other than that, I think we'll have a 10-1 vote that supports the formula that benefits our region. So however we decide to frame it, I think we'll have the right outcome. It was just the wrong message that we were sending after years and years of saying we weren't getting our fair share as such a dominant region in the state. And we've got it all cleaned up, but and I understand what Wayne was doing in terms of trying to be a team player on a very difficult topic, but it also contradicted a lot of the things that we were trying to say over many, many years. So we've got it cleaned up. Whatever you direct me to do, I think we're on the right direction.
Commissioner Dwalaby?
Okay, we have to support the formula that benefits our area the most. So, and I heard Wayne say that this helps Region 2 also, which is important to me. But it seems to me that when you throw population in at a certain level, you have to also include if that population is trying to go somewhere, because this is about transportation, not just about getting around your city. And when you have 650,000 people in, and it's snowing in Breckenridge, there's about 50,000 of them coming through. I mean, there was 22,000 at the ski area the other day. So about a month ago. So if you think about maybe half of those people coming, or a third of them coming from Colorado Springs and coming through Alma, unless I-70 closes, and then they all come through Alma, that's a lot of people. And it's an hourglass formula if you think about it. When you have a population, if you look at what's happening, and it's been working this way, there's wider lanes coming down from Bailey, there's wider lanes coming into Breckenridge, and then there's this gap called Park County of 2 lanes. And then you send all of that traffic through there on one day, and there's going to be a bad storm, and all those cars are going to be stuck overnight in Park County. And there's no place for them to go. There's no place to warm up. There's no gas. You're setting up for a disaster. And I want you to think about that as you're planning where this money goes, that something has to be done for that. If you're going to send all of I-70, you're going to keep building I-70 bigger, 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 more tunnels, more people, get them up there for that weekend. What's going to happen when they all come through Alma and they all get stuck there and it's all a parking lot?
What's your address up there?
Main Street, Highway 9. Highway 9. You can come by.
Well,
I know
just to kind of bring this to a conclusion, do we have a motion to recommend the formula proposed by Commissioner Gruen?
Mr. Chair?
We do have it as a discussion item. I'm willing to do some sort of a consensus vote here that is quite frankly, Commissioner Gruen is not bound by our votes anyway. So,
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Clark?
I'm going to move that we direct, that essentially, not necessarily just the STAC representative, but that we sign a resolution or provide a resolution from this board supporting the Transportation Commission's direction. And I guess what I need for the resolution is that we need to find out exactly what that says so that we know what we're supporting. So I'm not exactly sure how to word that. I am a little concerned that I did hear that there was a letter that was circulating that went potentially to the Transportation Commission that our board, essentially our executive director, signed on to, that didn't necessarily support this, what we're recommending today. So in the future, I'd like a process that more clearly defines how we take positions on some of this, because this is one of those things where we want the most benefit for our community and statewide. And I'm sensitive to Commissioner DeWalby's comments, But right now, population isn't included at all. And it's my understanding there's more money in the pot now, so
It doesn't hurt
hopefully
us.
nobody will, nobody's going to lose anything. There's going to be a hold harmless, essentially.
better.
But future allocations may affect that. But I think that I would like to see us sign a resolution, and I don't know, I'm assuming I can make a formal motion, even if it was on the agenda but not for action, with regard to supporting the Transportation Commission's proposal but I'm not sure what that proposal is, Les, so I'm going to need some help
Do I
from you.
have a motion for an agenda change to make this an action item?
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we have clearance for a motion.
So I need some help from our Transportation
I think what we
Commissioner.
will find is that the staff recommendation that you see on this sheet, and thank you, Craig, for finding this, this is the perfect worksheet that I didn't bring that really shows all of the staff work on this. And as you can see, those of you that have it on the right-hand column, the formula that results in an 8% share of RPP dollars to the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments MPO results from 35% lane miles, 15% truck miles, and 50% population. And that compares to the revised stack recommendation is 6.3%, up from 5.3%. So Wayne got an increase from where it was, but it's still substantial.
But you can do better.
Well, we're going to, I think if I had to make a prediction, I would predict that the Transportation Commission is going to approve this 50, 35, 15% split for the $50 million RPP funds for next year's budget.
The last column.
So
Yes.
is that the formula that you'd like included in the resolution, Commissioner Gruen?
That's certainly more favorable than the final stack recommendation budget. And it's the most favorable scenario to PPACG region, as you can see on this chart.
Wayne Williams?
Thanks. And Craig, thank you for finding this. So you see where stack was, which was a 5.3. And just to quickly run people down these charts, the formula factors that we talked about were VMT, lane miles, truck VMT, and population. You see different allocations of those percentages. The existing one, and the formula dollars are officially allocated by regions, and then within those sub-allocations, as the Transportation Commission moves forward, there may be allocations within those as well. And yes, I had one other vote that would increase it above the 6.3%, so the 6.3 was better than 5.3. So I supported increasing it from 5.3 to 6.3. But I believe this body should adopt a resolution of support for the staff recommendation of 50, 35, 15, because I think that's
Now, you said staff, not stack.
Staff.
Staff.
So the right-hand column,
All right. You got staff.
the far right column, which provides for, I think, the best allocation. And so you're always dealing with what's good, what's better, what's best. This is the best allocation. Commissioner Gruen's correct that this is the best for us, but I think it's also a fair one that still includes those still includes those lane miles that are important to look at for the rural communities, because all of us recognize that you can't just base it on population, because there are other people who drive through communities. Many of us have driven through Glenwood Canyon. If you funded Glenwood Canyon based on the population of Rifle and Glenwood Springs, you would have a dirt road that goes through 85 switchbacks and was one lane. You can't do it. So it's important to have both. I think the staff recommendation is the resolution this body should adopt support for, and that would be the far right column.
So, Commissioner Clark, just so I know where we are, Did you make a motion?
I did. So my motion would be to support a resolution on behalf of this board, which includes the staff recommendation column on the far right-hand side on our handout.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Okay, Craig.
To provide a little more background information briefly, these numbers are a couple years old, but they still give an idea. El Paso County has 2,273 people per lane mile. We're most in the state. Second most is Denver County, 1,221. Third most is Arapahoe County, 912. So we have more people than the next two combined. And then you go down, Teller County has 165, which is about average. Park has 50. Kiowa has 4 people per state lane mile. If you look at the CDOT's primary fiduciary responsibility for federal funds, it's the national highway system, which is based on some, not jurisdiction, but based on how the roads function, just primarily to support our economy. Instead of using state highway lane miles, the national highway system would be a much more effective calculator than state highway lane miles. And we would go from 1% of the state highway lane miles to about 9% of the national highway system lane miles.
I think that's a battle to be fought a different day.
Yeah, I just provide.
We got lots of people.
But we tried that one, too.
National highway system.
Rob, before we vote?
Yep, just more information, translation of percentages. I'll go back to this board's direction where you do the tip. You approve the tip and all the line items in there. In your current tip, RPP money is $21.5 million. We've heard CDOT say, well, that money doesn't exist. So this formula would then replace it at 8% times 50. I can do this math. It's about $4 million a year times a 6-year tip. It's about $24 million over a 6-year tip. So delta, 2.5-ish million. So that's the difference we're talking about. So if we have 24 million spread over the tip years, as the chair said, you all love to blend money with state highway money and STP Metro and all the other categories. So that gives you a sense of the dollars associated with it. We get up to $24 million, but again, the only hiccup is we all tried to tap the current $21.5 million, and we're told by CDOT correctly, well, that money doesn't exist anymore. So we want to make sure that the formula leads to tip dollars that you can actually spend. And so that's our understanding. So when the commission passes this, you all have more money to work with CDOT to do some pretty cool things around here. I mean, 24 million is a good benchmark.
Again, you touched on some things that may be a battle for another day.
Right.
Because we're talking formula here.
Right.
now.
But the formula leads to dollar amounts that I think is worth your consideration, what it means for the percent.
Mayor Snyder?
Well, it appears we're going to be voting on a as-yet crafted resolution.
I think we have.
Well, I understand the whereas, the therefore.
The motion is for this far right column.
But I'd like to see some whereas language, whereas we recognize the responsibility of the more populous counties to help subsidize a state highway system. And a little bit of sugar in that first part of that is my hope.
We can develop that, email it to everyone, so we'll get the direction and then send it quickly out.
That's great.
Would like to bring this to a vote. Any final comments? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Back to AFCURE.
Good morning. My name is Rich Muzzy. I'm the Environmental Program Manager here for Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. I will be providing a brief overview of the AFCURE Water Quality White Paper. With me are Jim Heckman, who's the General Manager for Fountain Sanitation District and Lower Fountain Metropolitan Sewage Disposal District, Roy Hill, General Manager of Security Sanitation District, and Jenny Johnson, who's a regulatory specialist for Carl Springs Utilities. They're all AFCURE members and are here to help answer any questions that you might have. Included on your table were 3 items that were passed out. A executive summary to the white paper that was included in your packet, a table that shows the stream classifications and standards for the streams that are in the AFCURE project study area. And also a hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation, just in case this goes on the blink. The board's heard about AFCURE on and off for the past year or so. Just to refresh you, AFCURE is an association of 11 wastewater discharge entities. 9 of them are within El Paso County, and 2, City of Pueblo wastewater and Pueblo West Metropolitan District are within Pueblo County. The purpose of AFCURE was to go ahead and provide a regional forum, much like many committees at PPACG, to go ahead and discuss water quality issues, to share information and knowledge and resources with regards to water quality regulations, their impacts, and upcoming standards. The impetus for the creation of AFCURE was the nutrient monitoring requirements, which are also known as Regulation 85. Some of the accomplishments of AFCURE are that they developed a sampling and analysis plan to go ahead and comply with Regulation 85. Instead of each entity submitting one sampling and analysis plan, AFCURE submitted one for the entire group, which right away saved some funding for each of the entities. A baseline monitoring plan was created that looks at the existing sampling locations, the parameters, and the frequency. A water quality white paper, I'll get into that a little bit more. And as I discussed last year, AFCURE was a party at the Arkansas River Basin hearing. It was found that speaking as one voice of 11 entities was a lot more effective than 11 individual voices. The purpose of the water quality white paper was to go ahead and provide a blueprint, a comprehensive understanding of the water quality issues within the project study area, and to go ahead and move forward on that blueprint to go ahead and address the concerns and issues. The project study area includes the main stems and tributaries of Fountain Creek and Monument Creek. That's pretty much the Fountain Creek watershed. And also the watershed east of the Fountain Creek watershed, the Chico Creek watershed, and the Arkansas River from Pueblo Reservoir to John Martin Reservoir. This pretty much reflects the boundaries of the wastewater treatment plants that compose AFCURE. Some of the drivers and the implications for the creation of the white paper is that regulations will have a cost on the utilities and districts, not just to them, but also the ratepayers. The modifications and advancements that will be necessary to go ahead and meet a lot of the standards will be passed on to the ratepayers. So that's why it's important, critical, to go ahead and get a better understanding of those costs and implications. I'll just briefly kind of go over stream classifications and water quality standards. That's kind of this table right here. Don't know how many of you are familiar with how kind of stream standards are assessed, but within Colorado there are 7 river basins, and within each of those river basins there are kind of smaller sub-drainages. This stream classifications is broken down into Lower Arkansas, Middle Arkansas, and the Fountain Creek watershed. Those are sub-drainages within the Arkansas River Basin. Pages 28 to 30 contain the 15 stream segments that compose the Fountain Creek watershed. For each stream segment right here, there's a description of the classifications of that stream segment and also the accompanying standards that have to be met for that stream segments. The Water Quality Control Commission establishes the regulations at rulemaking hearings about every 5 years or so. Stream segments are determined based upon hydrology, geography, geology, where two streams come together, and also water quality characteristics. Those are some of the features that are used to go ahead and determine each of the 15 stream segments. The water quality white paper is divided into 7 priority issues: arsenic, copper, E. coli, nutrients, selenium, temperature, and stream resegmentation. The list on the bottom of the slide there is the actual categories that each one of those issue areas are covered within the white paper. I'll briefly go through kind of each of these issue areas, some common themes within these issue areas, which again are discussed in more detail in the white paper, are that more data needs to be collected. We need to get a better understanding of the implications and the cost of complying with the regulations. We need to go ahead and determine what the impacts are for our region based upon the stream standards to better assess if they protect aquatic life. That is, if there's the potential to develop site-specific standards based upon the unique features in our streams and creeks within our region. Those are just kind of an overview of some common themes you'll see in each of these issue areas. With regards to arsenic, the Water Quality Control Division is proposing new kind of more stringent standards for arsenic, which could affect the permit limits of the wastewater treatment plant dischargers. So we're trying to kind of find out what those permit limits might be, what the implications would be for our region. We really need to collect more data. They've just started this process, and they won't be moving forward with a proposal to revise the arsenic standards until 2016. Copper. Copper has historically been a problem for some of the treatment facilities in Upper Monument Creek. They went ahead and used what's referred to as a BLM, a biological ligand model, to more precisely calculate out what the copper standards should be for those streams and creeks. What's nice about this model is that it uses other constituents and parameters to go ahead and help in those calculations. So the state and the EPA approved that model, and those standards are now reflected in those stream segments. We're going to see if it might be appropriate to go ahead and use that same model in other reaches and areas to go ahead and try to comply with standards. E. coli has been an issue of concern for many years. There are currently 5 stream segments listed as impaired for E. coli. Many of the board members might remember a study that was done in Upper Fountain Creek about 7 years ago, which assessed sources of E. coli, and it was found then that it was primarily avian sources, that is, pigeons, were contributing to the sources for that one particular segment. No work has been done to go ahead and develop what's referred to as TMDL, a total maximum daily load, which is a load allocation based upon the sources of the problem. So PPACG applied for and received a 319 grant from the state to go ahead and try to get a better look at E. coli. Look at some of the BMP's best management practices that might be effective in treating E. coli concentrations. Take a harder look at the data to find out the specific subsegments within the reaches that are having E. coli problems, and to go ahead and start developing a proposal to go ahead and address this. The reason for this is because we don't want to go ahead and have our region faced with a TMDL situation which would penalize potential sources that really are not sources. So we want to really get ahead of the game to go ahead and identify those sources, and if possible, to go ahead and delist those segments. This project will start towards the end of the year. Nutrients has been an issue that has affected pretty much every single wastewater treatment plant discharger. Some of you will remember the nutrient standards hearing that was in 2012, where interim standards were established through Regulation 85, and new standards were established through Regulation 31 for total nitrogen and total phosphorus and chlorophyll A, and those are being phased in through 2022. But they are very stringent, and we're trying to get a better handle on kind of what segments would not comply with those standards. It pretty much looks like most of the segments would not be, and would also create lots of funding would be required to go ahead and bring the wastewater treatment plants up to compliance for those standards. Right now, we're tagging on a nutrient modeling study that's being done in Boulder Creek that's taking a look at the possibility of developing site-specific standards for nutrients over there. And that's kind of the first step, is really collecting the data, determining how much data is needed, working with the state to determine, to develop a plan to see kind of what data they will need to go ahead and help develop site-specific standards for nutrients. Because we really want to protect the streams and creeks, but we want to go ahead and make sure that the aquatic life is protected from the standards that are established. Selenium has primarily been an issue of concern in the lower Fountain Creek area, segment 2A and segment 2B. Those two segments are pretty much from Monument Creek and Fountain Creek all the way down to Pueblo. In segment 2A, which goes down to the Highway 47 bridge, it's a long segment, and there's been a wide range of selenium concentrations, especially in the lower part. And we're trying to determine how much of it's naturally occurring selenium that's being leached out from the Pierre shell formations, and to go ahead and develop a proposal to either establish an ambient value for that subsegment, or to go ahead and break that segment out into a separate segment, and also take a look at other segments that might have high selenium concentrations. At the last Arkansas River Basin hearing, temperature standards were established based upon the expected fish species. There's not a lot of data regarding temperature in our region. Carl Springs Utilities, Fountain Sanitation Districts, Pueblo, and others are now collecting data and doing an assessment to go ahead and determine if we'll comply with those standards, what implication those standards will have on their permits, and go ahead and determine any corrective action that might be necessary, and to also potentially develop the site-specific standards. The Commission also recognized that this is an issue that needs to continue to be addressed. Resegmentation. As I mentioned, stream segments are broken up for a variety of reasons. Some of the stream segments within the Fountain Creek watershed have not been assessed in a long time. And what happens is, for instance, in segment 4, which is referred to as a catch-all segment, it contains all the tributaries of Monument Creek and Fountain Creek. There's default use. There's default standards associated with those use classifications based upon the streams that are within that segment. So there might not be the data to go ahead and support, say, a water supply classification for an individual stream, but because it's lumped into a large group of streams, it's given that classification by default. So we're starting to collect data. we're starting to look at existing data to go ahead and determine what would be the best way to go ahead and break out the existing streams so we don't have problems in the future with regards to water quality standards. Some of the next steps is AFCURE members and are working with Brown and Caldwell to go ahead and develop a water quality monitoring network. We're using the baseline monitoring plan as kind of the foundation. We're developing this plan based upon the 7 issue areas that have been identified in the water quality white paper. For each one of those issue areas, we're determining what water quality parameters need to be collected, the frequency of the collection, and also any opportunities for kind of shared funding of monitoring station and monitoring data collection as part of the agency responsibility. We're also determining some additional post-fire sampling locations. The USGS was contracted out to do some post-fire water quality sampling at 6 stations. They have completed the sampling from 3 of those stations. And I haven't looked at the results in details, but it does show, very high concentrations of total recoverable metals and also dissolved metals and E. coli and some also some nutrients. Right now, I'm working with the USGS to try to get kind of the background data for those stations to see how those compare, to see if they're indeed elevated, and if so, how much. So as part of this, we're kind of determining additional post-fire sampling locations, and also a resegmentation analysis. Those first 3 next steps are being completed by Brown and Caldwell with the help of PPACG staff and AFCURE members. And then the E. coli analysis, which is being funded through the 319 grant that I mentioned. With that, the ball evidently lasted the whole presentation, so.
Questions?
Other questions?
For Rich? Any of the supporting cast want to come up and make comments? They're willing to take questions. Jim?
Throughout this process, and every once in a while when it comes up in this meeting, I have pangs back to many years ago when I walked in to look at the first water quality plan. Spending a year at EPA on a postdoc. What is the impact of this attempt to start investigating our problems of the water being brought, that will be brought from Pueblo? Surely there's some kind of, I would hope ahead of time, structure that's ready to say what is the impact of that and how is it going to be mitigated, because there will be an impact. Has that been looked at yet?
Well, I know that, and Ginny, I'll take a stab at this, and then you can follow up. I know CSU went ahead and conducted, their environmental impact assessment to go ahead and determine what the water quality impacts would be from bringing the water up, and that's also kind of what's going to be evaluated, I guess, say indirectly in looking at kind of the water quality issues and comparing kind of sampling points. It didn't look like, I know from the environmental impact assessment, there would be a water quality impact from the actual flows from CSU, since it actually just contributes a small fraction of the flows into Fountain Creek. Go ahead, if you want to take it.
Well, and I think you're addressing
If you
the
could step fairly close to the mic.
flows from the wastewater treatment facilities over time as development increases, and I don't actually work directly with SDS, but I'm more in the permitting side. And right now, we don't see immediate impacts to our wastewater treatment facility capacities just from increased development. We have a fair amount of capacity currently. Depending on how the nutrient regulations go and changes to our wastewater treatment facilities that we'll have to install. So I think the concern was a lot about stormwater flows and development that causes increased stormwater flow. So, but water quality I don't think is as big an issue as initially was thought. So.
Other questions? Commissioner Steen.
A couple things. This study focuses on outputs of waste treatment, correct? I mean, the focus of the white paper is on treatment of wastewater coming out of treatment plants?
Not exactly. That is one of the focuses, but it also, it looks at the stream standards. So, I mean, for each of these 11 wastewater treatment plants, they have regulatory thresholds in their permits that they cannot exceed. So the concern is that when the standards are made more stringent, it might not actually protect the aquatic life, which is the intention. How will you go ahead and meet those standards? But it's also taking a look at these stream standards, which are associated for each stream segment, which are standards for the entire segment, not just the wastewater.
Well, I guess this question goes back to Dr. Knoll's point, was not looking at pollutants from their source, not just from the output of treatment plants. So there are organisms, for example, up in Teller County and Park County, the Coalition of the Upper South Platte are trying to mitigate pollutants at their source. Waste material is being stacked in water ravines and so on, mitigate that out, and forest pollutants and so on. So how much of this paper focuses on source water versus output water?
It depends on each of the issue areas. For instance, E. coli, the contributing partners for the E. coli grant were pretty much every single stormwater entity within the Fountain Creek watershed. So, El Paso County, City of Colorado Springs, City of Pueblo County, they all contributed, either in kind or a cash match for that grant. And the same goes for other issue areas such as selenium and nutrients. We're trying to go ahead and determine what the non-point source issues are and those sources versus the point sources. So kind of the issues associated with construction or underground storage tanks or septic systems, and trying to separate those out to know exactly what we should address for each one of those issues.
Okay. And one of the kind of, I don't know, I've just heard this issue kind of raising in public is pharmacological pollutants. How were the 7 items selected, and at what point do you look at other additional elements for, scrutiny?
Right, and that's a good point. That certainly is a emerging contaminant of concern. I'm not, sure of the status of that, but that is just something that we will need to take a look at too. I mean, all the pharmaceuticals, the concentrations that are being seen in the streams and creeks, and I'm kind of looking at the USGS reports and studies because it's kind of an emerging issue. There's not a lot of research on it yet, but we will be reviewing the white paper on an as-needed basis, and that very well could become a next
call. Who makes the call to add an item?
That would be an AFCURE call.
Okay. Okay.
And I would add that it depends on what EPA promulgates as far as water quality standards, and then it takes time for, after EPA promulgates something, for the state to adopt it into the stream standards. And then after that, we start collecting data and looking at what kind of quality we have to deal with. So it takes quite some time. It's a concern. We have only one contaminant that has been promulgated in the state currently that could be considered, it's not a pharmaceutical, but it's like an emerging contaminant. It's called nonylphenol, and it's found in almost everything. It's in shampoo and soap and hair dye in very high concentrations. So a lot of those come through wastewater treatment plants, and they're very difficult to remove because they're not designed to remove things like that. But currently, nothing else has been promulgated in the state as far as water quality standards. So we wait and see what they tell us.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Rich, it was good to finally get a little better sense of what AFCURE is really all about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Title VI and limited English proficiency plans. We have
Hi, Yolanda
Yolanda
Roberts. I was told by my boss that I had to really go as fast as I possibly can through this. So I think
While Yolanda's working through that, just a reminder for the board members, this will be part of the workshop. It's not an action today. So your next board workshop before your next board meeting where we ask for approval, we'll be talking about this item, maybe even the item we just heard on.
I just needed to go.
Here.
Thank you. I
We
can't
do
see.
every Friday.
Friday before the board? Yeah.
Next month is on the same day as staff, so
We may have to modify that one.
We'll take a look
Yeah,
at it.
we've been emailing out to the board the agenda and topics.
I didn't
Hopefully you're
catch what
getting
you
them.
said next month would be.
Okay.
What the topic would be. The English and limited English. Oh, I'm from Southern
Okay.
California.
Back to the
Back to
item at hand.
Title VI and limited English proficiency plans. In PPACG's most recent certification from FHWA and FTA, it was noted that we did not have a published Title VI plan or a limited English proficiency plan, so hence the reason for me being here today. Normally I was going to say this whole sentence here, but I'm going to go fast through this whole thing. But as you can see, this is Title VI from the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Just so you know, the intent of Title VI and limited English proficiency is to inform the public of their Title VI rights and to encourage participation in the regional transportation planning process for those groups that are underserved in our population. Executive Order 898 deals with environmental justice, and mainly what this deals with is addressing the needs of our minority and low-income populations here in the region. Title VI requirements. We have to ensure that our regional transportation plan, which we're working on right now, and our transportation improvement program comply with Title VI. We have to address the needs of our minority populations, and we also have to ensure that all of our public involvement process, that there is no barrier for them with a dialogue with regional decision-making. Here's a breakdown of our race, ethnicity, and poverty rates. And as you can see, for El Paso and Teller County, the highest minority population is the Hispanic or Latino population. And then you can see the other breakdowns. Mobility management. PPACG does not provide transit services. However, we do have a mobility manager here. And so she's now left. But anyway, she helps with collaborating with our transportation services in the region. We serve seniors, disabilities, people with low incomes, conduct public outreach, and obviously she's an advocate, or PPACG is an advocate for transportation providers. Limited English Proficiency Plan, Executive Order 13166.
Tyler, it's been fun. Travis. Whoever you are.
Trying to sneak out.
Don't let the door hit you.
Oh, that was pretty funny, actually.
Nice to be played. Yolanda, will you bring us back to...
I think I better come back here. Executive Order 13166. We have to examine the services that we provide here at PPACG. We have to identify those persons with limited English proficiency, and then develop a system so persons can have meaningful access to all the stuff that we do here. But all of this is done without burdening any of the costs with PPACG. So we have to consider how much this costs, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. The number and proportion of LEP persons in El Paso and Teller counties. Once again, if you look where it says household speaking Spanish is once again the one with the highest percentage. However, if you look at all households, it is a little confusing, but if you have any questions, go ahead. But all households, it's actually less than 3% for both El Paso and Teller. So federal regulations require that we only have to translate only those documents that are vital. And I'm going to get to those documents in a minute. So if anyone has any questions on that, let me know. But otherwise, I will go ahead because Craig wants me to go fast. Here's an example of one of our forms that we're going to provide. Since Spanish is the highest percentage of household speaking in this region, we're translating the policy statement, this complaint form that you see in both English and Spanish, the complaint process and how you fill out this form, and then at the very end we also have a poster that we're going to put up both in the front lobby and then downstairs here. So that's going to be...
Before you
Sure.
go beyond that, I know the clerk and recorder has hard limits where if you have more than a certain percentage, he has to provide votes or ballots in those languages. Did I miss that? Do you have a hard number here that, you know?
According to the federal regulations through FHWA and FDA, you have to be, like there you see it's 2% and 0.5% for Teller County. As long as you're under 5%, you only have to do the vital documents for the minority that's, in this case, it's Spanish, the Hispanics. So like if you had some Japanese population here or a Chinese population here, we don't have to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. If that makes sense. Okay. So what we're going to do for Title VI and LEP Coordination Administration is we're going to keep a Title VI complaint log, make sure our public outreach strategies include all the underserved populations, keep a track of what are the annual number of LEP persons we encounter in all of our meetings and our events and stuff like that. Have the needs of the LEP persons been addressed? What is the current LEP population? Because maybe it's changed. Maybe all of a sudden it's not the Hispanic Latino population. It could be somebody else, some other population that's come in. Are our translation services effective? Are they working? Do we have enough money to actually fund all of this? And then are we also in compliance with Title VI and LEP plans? And then here's our poster. Questions? Preguntas? I think that was 5 minutes. I tried to do it as fast as possible.
Yolanda can translate.
The translations actually are accurate.
Questions, comments? Appears to me we have another federal requirement, just like, the food's got to be grown.
Domestically.
Yeah, so it's important that we stay in compliance,
Yes.
as well as meeting the needs of the population. I don't know that we've had any particular complaints, but
Yeah. Oh, and there's been 0 complaints, just so you know, since
Okay.
1967. So, okay, thank you.
thank you. Brings us to our census urbanized area boundary adjustments.
I gave Yolanda all of 5 minutes. I'm going to take 2. Census designation is what's used to determine whether something is urban and rural. We are going to be required to report out on our roads how they're performing, whether they're urban roads or rural roads. The way the census boundary lays out now, it's possible for a road every tenth of a mile to change from urban, rural, urban, rural, urban, rural. Federal highway allows us, for transportation planning purposes, to smooth that boundary so that the road is in or out, so you create some logical from, long runs. There's a mile or, some long runs of urban versus rural. We're going to go through that process. We had a brief information item last month with TAC. We only had one concern, a very valid concern, actually from Woodland Park, that designation of, the extension of the Colorado Springs urban area up to Woodland Park could, maybe trigger something in as far as stormwater and those type of things. So we've been working with Bill and had some internal discussions. What we think a solution to that is, instead of extending the Colorado Springs urban area up to the Woodland Park urban cluster, because it's already an urban cluster, is to extend the urban cluster down to Colorado Springs' urban area, keeping it designated as an urban cluster, but still giving us the urban designation. If that is still a little nerve-wracking for Woodland Park, we can create a gap, find us some roads, natural roads on US 24 through the pass to create a gap where it's rural, and then we get back into the urban cluster. But we're going to work with Woodland Park on that. You should be seeing an action item next month, because we heard about this at the May statewide MPO meeting, and it has to be done by June. Or at the March meeting, it has to be done by June, which doesn't really give us a lot of time, so sorry. Questions?
Mr. Turley, any comments? They're working with you? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to our legislative update.
Fewer than 30 people in the room, but more than 20 people accessing the PPACG network. So, for those of you still with us, the legislative tracker, the session will end May 7th. Nothing new and exciting on the tracker. I see Councilmember Knight already left, but House Bill 1160, which he asked us to monitor, that was signed by the governor on the 4th. There was a question from Mayor Snyder about Urban Renewal Authority potential bills to be dropped by Representative Del Grosso. He's in Larimer County, that's Fort Collins, Loveland. Right, it was the URA. And I do not believe he dropped that. I went and looked. I could not find an authoritative answer. I did see how there was a lot of back and forth between him and some of the county and city people up there. They wanted to settle any of the URA TIF at the local level before it became a state legislated.
Well, that's the city's excuse.
I didn't have an authoritative link. There were some back and forth blogs, but nothing that, yeah.
So when you say it's dropped, mean it's not happening?
Introduced.
Or not, well, yeah, right. By not dropped, I mean not introduced.
Gotcha, that's what I thought.
And if you want me to, I can briefly tell you what part of the
Later. This has not been introduced, so let's.
Any questions?
It works. Item number 8 would be member entity announcements. Anything for the good of the Commonweal?
June 24th, CDOT will be hosting a telephone town hall for our planning region. Our host and co-host for our region, in addition to Commissioner Gruen, Dennis Heisey, I believe, and Wayne Williams, will be representing for us. So tune in to be informative. I really don't know since it's the statewide plan.
Okay. Anything else?
You're going to be represented.
You have the meeting schedule. With that, we are adjourned.
You going to Salt Lake City?
I am. Are you going?
Decided yet. Took Omaha last year.
Yeah.
I heard that was a good trip.
I was there. Yeah, that was my first.